Okay. Oh, shoot, guys. What is up? Uh, we're doing things a little different tonight. Little different indeed. Oh, look, there I am. Sweet. So, we're going to wait, see who all joins us. Um, Maybe nobody will join us. Either way, we're going to do this thing. Um, it's Thursday. It's Thirsty Thursday. So, we're drinking. We're discussing Hollow Knight lore and what it means to us in the story. Um, Tonight's is going to be different, obviously, because we're here, or we're here. I don't know which way I need to look, but we've got things set up. Um, we're trying to get it set up, anyways. We've got our backdrop going. We have our sound. Um, Obviously, sound has been a big issue for us. So if my sound is not working, please let me know. I'm going to try and follow along with the chat as well. This is our first time actually doing this with people here, so this is going to be a funky one, guys. But we are set up for it. Somebody's here. Hey, whoever's here, would you please let me know if this sound is working? We played with it a little right beforehand. Couldn't really find a good setup for it, so actually now the mic is in the shot because for some reason it didn't want to pick up outside. Um, but yeah, let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if this is all coming through. And really, other than that, I mean, welcome. Welcome to how we're probably going to start doing these streams. Welcome to how we kind of want this setup to go. Normally, I would probably throw some gameplay up. I'm actually finding out that the gameplay bogs down my computer like a mother trucker. And so, we're going to have a picture tonight. Hopefully, in the future, we'll have more. But let's jump into this thing, shall we? So, what we're going to discuss tonight is we're going to discuss the idea that the Pale King granted these bugs a mind, and that with that mind, it's only found in Hollow Nest. It's granted by the Pale King, but if you venture out past and into the waste, it's relinquished. It's not wiped involuntarily. You know your risk when you head out there. And we know that the mine was granted through the Elegy of Hallownest, which was written by Monomon. That under Palus Watch are base instincts you redeemed. There's several instances that talk about the Pale King redeeming them of their base instincts. So many people like to think that that means like they were just all fighting and they were savage and there was nothing going on. And that's so wrong. And we can see instances of that all through Hollow Nest, which is the amazing thing. Um, does the waste erase that mind? Also a no. Both of these are lies, and it's amazing that we've been lied to before in the game and totally believed it, bought into it, and of course at the very end there's a huge reveal. And that lie being that our pure vessel had ascended, and that our pure vessel was the answer. And when we found out that no, the pure vessel wasn't pure, our pure vessel didn't capture that radiance. We've been told lies throughout. As a matter of fact, one of the first bosses most of us fight is the false knight, literally false. He in himself is a lie. And so the idea that everything told to us in Hollow Nest is truth has to be taken with a grain of salt. And to further prove that point, Maskmaker tells us that truth in Hollow Nest is always buried below layers. It's never to be taken at face value. Don't ever take anything in Hollow Nest at face value. You have to go deeper. And like I said, Maskmaker says it's hidden deep below many layers. And that's the whole idea of the Look Deeper project, is to peel back those layers and really find out what's going on. So with this mind granted to us and the idea that the waste erases that mind, I couldn't take it at face value and I had to look deeper and found out that both of these things are fundamentally a lie. The bugs of what is now Hallownest, before obviously we don't know those names canonically. I actually speculate they probably had names. But those bugs worshipped beings. There was Un with Green Path, and really Green Path, Queen's Garden, Fog Canyon, all of that was Green Path, and they worshipped Un. Un created those beings, and they walked out of Un's dream and directly into the area. Deep Nest had Hera, the beast, and her mate. And all we know about him is he was a cast of honor. But they worship Hera, and they still worship Hera. Even rejecting the Pale King's rule, they still worship Hera. The Stalking Devout are devout. It's right there in their name, but when you dream nail them, they also show that they're worshiping. These bugs were not without minds before. This is a lie, and quite possibly the biggest example of this we have. Not just looking at the basic rudimentary stone tablets in Green Path or the symbolism in Deep Nest. When you go into the Beast Den, there's 3 different symbols you find in there. One that resembles a Stalking Devout, one that's probably Deep Nest symbol, and one of the Weavers symbol. And the Weavers themselves, guys, the Weavers were an intelligent race, and we know this because they were recording history. They weren't with the Pale King either. So the idea that the Pale King moved in and gave them a mind to think is fundamentally flawed. And like I said, our biggest example that we can see of this has to be the Radiants. The Radiants and the Moth Tribe are our biggest example, because the Radiants and the Moth Tribe were not only there, they were created, the Moth Tribe was created by the Radiants through her dreams. They were there worshiping her, and we know this because we're told this. They worshipped her, and then there was a betrayal, and they turned their backs on her. So if you already have sentient beings that are worshiping another god, to choose to abandon and follow another god, that in and of itself is a mind. That is a thinking, rational, conscious being. The Pale King did not suddenly show up and grant these bugs the ideas, the mind to think them. They were already doing this, and that's where we can already see that our mind granted is a lie. But then we can take it one step further and ask, what did the Pale King actually grant them, if not a mind to think? What was it that he gave these bugs? And as we look through Hallownest and as we explore, there's one thing that becomes shockingly clear, and that's that the bugs loved the Pale King. These guys didn't just love him, they didn't just think of him as a king or as a god. They worshipped the ground this dude walked on. So much so that the bugs of Hallownest were making idols, not just statues, but literal idols. An idol to worship without ever seeing the Pale King. Relic Seeker Lim tells us that many of the residents never even saw the Pale King. He was very elusive, and so all of these idols were handmade, and they vary from person to person that was making them. So we have the Pale King in architecture. We have the Pale King in all of the symbols found around. We have the Pale King in statues and literal idols. These bugs were enthralled. They were fascinated, so much so that one of them, Lurian, gave his life to be a dreamer so that the Pale King's plan could go on. That's very unique in the fact that Monomon had doubts. Monomon had her doubts about it and was reluctant, and Hera so much so that she just flat out said no and rejected the Pale King. In fact, most of Deep Nest did, and we see that in the failed tramway. And I gotta ask today, why did Deep Nest not get influenced by whatever this was, this fascination with the Pale King? And it's kind of simple, guys, when we really get into it. The Pale King, uh, I've said before, is a parasitoidal wasp. Um, he's a parasite, for lack of a better term. And there is something called neuroparasitology, where the the parasite will actually control the behaviors of its host. Now, there's a couple really cool examples. One is actually of a wasp, and it actually burrows into, or it lays its eggs into a caterpillar. The larvae hatch and eat the caterpillar from the inside out, but they're careful not to touch the organs. But as they do so, they secrete a chemical. And that chemical will actually make this caterpillar protect the larvae once the larvae have hatched. So this these larvae burrow out of the caterpillar, and they then cocoon themselves in almost silk. And then that caterpillar will actually use its silk that it should be using on its own cocoon to further protect them. Those chemicals that they secreted have altered the behavior of this caterpillar, so much so that it now uses its natural aggression to fend off predators and save the very beings that were inside of it and killing it. There's another example where a worm will actually enter into a cricket. And this worm, it enters into the cricket through different ways. Its lifestyle is a little complex, so I'm not going to go completely into it. But what this worm does is when it hatches, it's inside the cricket, and it forces that cricket to go to water, swimming pool, puddle, pond, whatever it is, because that's where it's going to lay its eggs. So it will take that cricket and it pushes that cricket to water. Now, sometimes that cricket dies, Quirrel. Sometimes that cricket lives, just kind of depends. But these parasites can fundamentally change the behavior of their host. And going back to the parasitoidal wasp example with the caterpillar, they don't have to be inside the host to necessarily change their behavior. And that's what we're seeing here. The Pale King, exuding his light and his radiance, has affected these bugs' mind. And like I said, it's really simple to see why Deep Nest wasn't affected by this, because Deep Nest aren't insects. They're arachnids. There's a huge difference in this one area, in that they're arachnids. They have 2 body segments instead of 3. They have 8 legs instead of 6. These are arachnids, where we were told they're spiders. These aren't the general bug we think of when we think insects. So no, they're not affected. They're able to resist it. They are able to become not infected, if you will, by the Pale King's influence, which is something really odd to think about, that the Pale King is now infecting this area. But with the Pale King came that second question, because that lore tablet up in Howling Cliffs actually tells us that if we go out into the waste, that we'll lose that mind granted, that false mind, that love, that devotion to the Pale King. We will have to give it up and we will lose it. And that's a lie. Plain and simple, that's a lie, guys. You will lose that mind that the kingdom grants. And that lore tablet, the way that lore tablet actually reads is, higher beings, these words are for you alone. These blasted plains stretch, never ending. There is no world beyond. Those foolish enough to traverse this void must pay the toll and relinquish the precious mind this kingdom grants. Those words seem so straightforward. Hey, if you're leaving, there's nothing else out there. There's nowhere to go. It is never ending, and you will roam forever. You will also lose your mind. But we now know that mind is a lie. That mind is just the unrelenting, undevoted love, for lack of a better term, of the Pale King. because he is now changing our behavior. So, venturing out, we leave his influence, and yes, we lose our mind. We lose our love for the Pale King. He becomes almost a distant memory, if you will. And the Elegy of Hallownest perfectly sums that up, because in the wilds beyond, they whisper your name. As those bugs ventured out, there's hushed whispers that yes, this is where they came from. But in that line of the Elegy of Hallownest, it also tells us that there are bugs out there that know of the Pale King. Along with this, guys, the lore tablet says there's nothing else out there, and we can clearly see this as a lie just by looking at our characters that we come in contact with. We have Cornifer and Iselda, who literally say they've moved here. They've settled down in Dirtmouth because of the ruins below. Cornifer became enthralled. He became fascinated by those ruins, and he wanted to explore them, to chart them. And so they settled down there, so that was on their literal doorstep. This is where we've got a question. If they came from somewhere else, and we know there are bugs out there, where are they coming from? Because Cornifer directly says, as soon as he could, he left the nest, and he left his siblings, and he left his mother. There's something out there breeding, and it's easy to say, hey, there's bugs out there that are breeding, yes, but they are basic, they are simple. But that's not what we see from Cornifer. We see a well-traversed bug. That's not what we see from Iselda. We see a fierce warrior who has laid down her nail. These two are very refined, of better terms. They are refined. They are not primitive by any means. They have skills. Whether it's skills of being a warrior or skills of cartography, they have skills that they are putting to use here. And it's not like the kingdom granted them this precious mind, because Cornifer says he's been doing this a while. He says he's always loved exploring, and they chose to settle down here. Iselda says she thought they would just be a mere stop, a temporary stop. So in other words, they're traveling, they're roaming, and they're thinking. These two alone break the idea that there's nothing else out there and that the mind comes from this kingdom. But we also have the question of Zote. Zote may not be from Hallownest, and while he looks like a vessel, he has a mouth. Something not even Hornet has, which seems very odd, and maybe we can say that he's just an impure vessel, and maybe Zote is from Hallownest. But Zote always mentions leaving the nest, and he came here seeking, I believe, to make his father happy, basically. Okay, so let's rule Zote out. Maybe Zote's not the best example, but we have more characters we can look at. We have Godseeker, who literally came from another land entirely, and we get a small glimpse into this land once, maybe twice, in the Land of Storms, and of course in the Tuner memory. Maybe that's the Howling Cliffs, as it does share audio cues with and some visual aspects. But maybe that's just more of the Land of Storms. Now it doesn't have the mask, and so we can clearly say that the Land of Storms was somewhere else, somewhere that was worshiping other gods, much like we saw in Hallownest before the Pale King showed up. Again, Godseeker is refined. Godseeker believes herself to be above us and talks down to us. Clearly a being of higher intelligence. Maybe not a higher being, maybe not a god, but clearly a being who is thinking and who has a mind of her own. In fact, the Weathered Mask tells us that their thoughts may have been focused in the center. So they are thinking, and that is canonical. There's proof. But the biggest proof that these two theories mash up so freaking well, guys, is literally the Pale King himself. The Pale King and this lore tablet have told everyone not to leave the kingdom, that there is nothing else out there. And that those bugs are savage and basic, and they will lose their mind and they will revert right back to it. And then we look at the Pale King, because the Pale King is not from Hollow Nest. The Pale King tunneled through mountains and over deserts, and he found and he stumbled upon Hollow Nest purely by accident. He discovered this land that he decided to lay claim to. The Pale King is not from Hollow Nest, yet he does not wish any of his servants, any of his bugs to leave Hollow Nest, because if they do, they are no longer in his influence. This is a lie conceived by the Pale King, an outsider himself, and it's very easy to see this if you're not influenced by him. But the bugs that are influenced by him believe that there is nothing else out there and that they will lose their mind. They're under his influence, and that's why they don't question this, guys. So, we have the lie of a mind granted. We have the lie that the waste erase your mind. And our two biggest flaws in this theory are Quirrel, because we know Quirrel left, and when he came back, his mind was gone. His memories were gone. Not his mind. He still had the mind. But we also know Quirrel's from here, so maybe the mind was granted by the Pale King. That's a very easy argument to make as well. And then the second big flaw we have in this is ourselves as the player character. Because if we ourselves have lost our memory, which we have, was it the waste that took it away? And I've got to say no, because we don't know that we've lost our mind. We don't know that our entire memory has been erased. All we know is we have lost one memory. And there's something unique that kind of shows us, hey, maybe we do have other memories, and maybe we actually have a greater understanding of the world than we thought. There's actually a couple things. So the first thing is, somehow we know every bug's name. And of course, from a gameplay standpoint, it just pops up. But it's not just from a gameplay standpoint, guys. It's also canonical lore, because we are completing the Hunter's Journal. We are writing in, we are filling out as we go along. We are completing the decks, for lack of a better term here. For actually what we're really doing. We're completing a dex. And we know these names. We know them. And the second solid freaking example, again, comes from one of those gameplay examples. World sense. Though we may be in that black egg, we'll know the state of the world. And of course, that's probably directly reflecting to, or referencing the Hollow Knight himself. However, we obtain that. We now have a sense of the world. So, we still know what's going on. We still have something about us. Is it a mind? Could be. The Void Idol statue in Godhome used to read Void given a mind. Now it reads Void given focus. Could it be a mind we have? Maybe. Maybe we do have a mind. You can argue that really easy as well, but that's not for now. That's totally for another time. But that memory that we have lost, the one memory we can say, hey, we don't remember, is the birthplace memory. And in that birthplace memory, it's not lost, guys, because we remember it, we have it again. It is repressed. When you lose a memory, you can't get it back. When a memory is repressed and it's stuffed down deep inside, there are triggers that can pull it back up. And that is exactly what we see. If a memory and a mind are lost, there is no recovery. And we see that with Quirrel. Quirrel's mind and his memory are lost. He gets tidbits, but he doesn't remember anything. He doesn't remember this. We remember it fully. We have repressed that memory. And when we go down into the abyss and we venture down deeper into the birthplace, we find the egg. But repressed memories are hard to pull out. It takes a strong trigger. It can take returning to the scene where it happened, which we've done. But it's further repressed than that because repressed memories are usually done through trauma. Whether that's physical trauma, emotional trauma, whatever trauma it may be, that's what represses it. And it represses it so that we are safe, so that we are not hurt. And what do we get here when we finally strike the egg? We actually have to use a strong trigger. We have to use a tool literally built to tear the fabric between waking and dream. We use the dream nail, we strike it, and we enter into the birthplace memory. And that's where things are amazing because we remember it. And not only do we remember it, we see the trauma. We literally witness the trauma that made us repress it. The rejection of the Pale King, the rejection of the Hollow Knight, our literal fall to what we believe is our death. So we have physical trauma, we have emotional trauma, and we get to witness this. But not only do we witness it, there becomes a change. And once you witness that birthplace memory, you obtain the void heart. There is a physical change inside of us. And now that charm is literally a part of us. We cannot unequip it, we cannot take it off. It's us. That trauma has now manifested and it is us. And we hold it within us the entire time. Now, looking at it from a gameplay standpoint, no, we can say, hey, in God Home, we can actually do a charm bind and it comes off. But in normal gameplay, no, we can't. It's literally a part of us. And so we've got to take that into real careful consideration and see what that means. That we have now faced the trauma, we have embraced the trauma, and we have made it a part of us. That's insane. But like I said, that's repression. That's not forgetting. So the waste didn't wipe our memory. We repressed this memory. But we still have to answer for Quirrel. Because Quirrel's memory is gone. Quirrel doesn't get his memory back the entire way through. He gets pieces of it back, as if looking through a shattered mirror. That memory, those memories, that mind has been wiped. There are tiny bits and pieces left, but for the most part it is gone. That life is gone. And it's very simple and it's very straightforward to say, hey, the waste took it. When we look at the comic, we know Quirrel was in the waste and he returns to Hollow Nest. When we meet Quirrel at the Black Egg, we know he returns to Hollow Nest because he tells us this. But Quirrel did not have his mind wiped from the waste either. Quirrel had his mind wiped because of the mask he wore on his head. I'm not talking about his face because that's possibly arguably a mask as well. I am talking about Monomon's mask. So to fully understand this, we have to realize when this happened. Those masks have a power. They create a seal. There's a protection to them. And we see it on all three Dreamers, and we see their seal of binding on the Temple of the Black Egg itself. And actually, it's on the Black Egg that's inside the Temple of the Black Egg. Semantics. But when we break them is when that seal begins to break. Those masks have power. And we know from Mask Maker himself that to change a face, to conceal it fully within another, is a powerful protection, that is, but one with sad consequence. The original mind is destroyed, though those of striking will may still retain a sliver of that concealed self. And guys, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a mind destroyed with slivers still there. Quirrel is literally the perfect example of what happens when you wear one of these masks. And Quirrel did not even put the mask on fully because he did not fully conceal his face. He wore it more as a hat. And this power that these masks had still robbed him of his memories. And yes, it is that mask. Quirrell literally tells us this. When we defeat Umu and we have broke the mask and killed Monomon, Quirrell tells us he's beginning to feel his age. Grant me a moment to rest for the deed done. I begin to feel my age, I believe is the quote, roughly. That one I'm doing off the top of my head. But then we see him at Blue Lake. And Quirrell at Blue Lake is probably one of those sad moments in the game for everyone, because Quirrell at Blue Lake is the end. It is the end of an era, it's the end of a story, and it is an end of a friendship. Because Quirrell, throughout everything, when everything looked terrible, we would always find Quirrell and he was our buddy. But Quirrell tells us some really interesting lore here. That while we get caught up in emotions, we can't look past his words. Twice I've seen this world, and through my service, though my service may have stripped the first experience from me. Though my service may have stripped my first experience from me. His service was to Monomon to bear the weight of that mask. Monomon had a plan. Those masks were needed to make the seal. The seal was created. Monomon is asleep. This means Quirrell had to take the mask from a sleeping Monomon. Without that mask, the seal could not be created. Without a dreamer, the mask does not work. Quirrell took the mask from a sleeping Monomon and ventured out into the waste. For what reasons? We may never know. But Quirrell did this. Quirrell did this through his service to Monomon. That mask, that quote from Maskmaker, directly tells us that that is the consequence of one of these masks. That is the consequence of being a dreamer and of possessing a mask. You lose your mind. But if you have striking will, you may retain a sliver of who you used to be. Quirrell has now witnessed this world twice. The first time he had it stripped from him due to this mask. Not due to venturing out into the waste. Not due to anything other than his service. So, we now have unraveled this mystery. We have fully answered why our memory is lost, our one memory. We have fully answered why Quirrell's mind is gone due to the mask. We have shown that there are other beings out there with minds. There are other civilizations, Godseeker, beyond those waste. And if you still don't believe there's something else out there, if you still believe that the waste are taking minds, all we have to do is take one step back and look at the second to last DLC, the Grim Troop. Because we know the Grim Troop show up at kingdoms that are dying. Not just this kingdom, but kingdoms, plural. We know there are others out there, and we know the ritual of the Nightmare Heart using Grim to burn the father and to feed the child has gone on forever. We know it is an unending cycle. And that means Grim's going places. That means there are other things beyond there. There are thinking beings. We can prove over and over again that those wastes do not take your mind. We can prove over and over again that the only thing granted by the Pale King is servitude. Undying devotion only to himself. The Pale King is no more a king than any invader has ever been, because that's what he is. The Pale King stumbled across what is now Hallownest and laid claim to it. He vanquished the other gods. So much so that he has literally started a war that has killed the entire kingdom of Hollow Nest. He is so concerned with keeping the citizens under his control and not relinquishing that power that he would sacrifice all of them in order to get rid of one other god that was ruling over one tribe. Because of the Pale King, this is an all or nothing fight, and no cost is too great. Hey, woo! Thank you very much, guys. Obviously, this one's a little different. This write-up has been about 2 months in the work. These things take a ton of time. These things take a lot of research, and I try and make sure they're all solid before presenting them. I hope you like this one. I hope it answers some more questions. We just got done with Mask Maker right before this. I think I've released 3 write-ups this week. So next week I will probably take a little bit of time off. Like I said, this one's literally been in the works for like 2 months. And they just, one write-up kind of flows into the next sometimes, and they compound on themselves. So when I was in Mask Maker and I was looking through that took me roughly, well, Mask Maker himself, I've actually been dreading releasing anything on him because he's so mysterious, and I couldn't find anything to tie him until very recently. I write a ton of theories. I break a ton of theories. I break my own theories more than anybody else's. For every one of my theories you see, I've probably broke 3 or 4 that were just garbage. They were absolute garbage, and so I don't want to give you guys that. This one was slated to be released next week. Somebody in the group actually asked a question. Oh, and we're on YouTube. If you don't know what group, Hollow Knight Soul Posting over on Facebook. Go check that out. I admin there. I shit post there. There's some amazing artists there. There's some awesome content creators there. And it's a fun group. But if you guys want to help this project out, if you want to help out the writings, please consider donating on the Patreon. I'll leave links, I think, down below, probably in the comments somewhere, or maybe on this video. If you guys want to help me out, I would super appreciate it. The computer I'm running on right now, this background, I don't know which way I am yet. It's got to be static right now, because if I run any gameplay or anything back here, it bogs the computer down so bad I can't stream. We've done some tests with it last week. Apparently that's what actually killed my internet, was me trying to stream at the same time. So I'm getting ready to make a really large purchase for a gaming computer so that I can bring you guys this, maybe a little better background, maybe some more content. It will also help me out in the writing, the gameplay aspect of things, and get some more videos up and going to you guys. Patreons, I cannot thank you guys enough. You guys are fantastic. To the 2 guys that are waiting, check it out. I got them. This has been a long time in the waiting, but I have your shirts. I will mail them out to you. As a matter of fact, I will probably contact you again this evening to make sure I've got those addresses correct. You are going to get your shirts. If you guys want the shirts, I can also leave a link down. You can purchase shirts. And I'll tell you right now, guys, off the shirts, I believe I make like 18 cents. I have them at the absolute lowest I could drive them. I'm not looking to make money. If you want them, by all means, I want you guys to have them. So they're stupid low prices. I enjoy doing this, guys. Like I said, it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of work and effort. So if you enjoy these, please let me know. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being here. And I cannot wait to see you guys again. Probably next Thursday when we do this all over again. But as for right now, good night, guys. You guys be safe.